All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of Ole Miss After Dark. We are here once again on a Sunday to do our game recaps like we've been doing every single week so far this year. This is going to be a tough one to do, but it must be done. Did not expect this to be the outcome coming into this weekend, but Rebels end up dropping a heartbreaker 20-17. This is one of those games that you don't expect to lose, right? Lane Kiffin, since he's been in Oxford, he's won at home and he hasn't lost games he's supposed to. He did both of them on Saturday.
Yeah, it's a tough one, but like you say, we'll get into it. We'll try our best to figure out what went wrong. Maybe even if we do a good job, find ourselves on the sideline. I don't know. We'll just have to see.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Yeah, let's
I'm
do
just
that.
kidding.
Well,
Yeah, man. No,
let's start diving into it a little bit.
Let's do it.
Yeah, this was a game, Mitch. I don't know if you feel the same way. I haven't really talked to anybody about this game since it ended. Kind of secluded myself a little bit, sat with my thoughts, tried to figure some things out. I never, for a second, thought Ole Miss was going to lose this game until we missed that field goal at the end. Like even as we were driving down three, I thought we would at least get the field goal, go to overtime. And the worst thing that was going to happen was Ole Miss was going to be 4-1 against the spread this week. But that's obviously isn't how it went down. Caden Lee missed the field goal there at the end of the game. Looking at the numbers here, we really didn't play that bad defensively. I felt like we did okay there. They were 4 for 16 on third down, but they were 3 for 3 on fourth downs, including that big 4th and 7 there where they go down and score a touchdown to go up on us, which looked like a push off to me, but that's not what ended up getting called. The front 7, I thought, played really, really well, held them to just 2 yards per carry rushing. They ran it 47 times for a net total of 93 yards. So Walter Nolan and the guys, Jared Ivey, I thought, played a really good game for his first game back. He seemed to really control things up front. Suntrine Perkins was all over the place, as well as Princely Uman just kind of talk to me before we start diving into the other side of the ball, what you saw from the defense. I thought the front 7 played well. I thought the back end played good enough. They just had some really big penalties that cost us.
Yeah, I'm almost there with you. I think the defense played good. I think Suntrine Perkins played great. And I think that the front 7 played better than the DBs, right? Like I think that the DBs struggled. I get the aggressive play. I actually liked the aggressive play, but it felt like it came back to hurt us yesterday because even though they were 4 for 16 on third down, it feels like there were 4 or 5 penalties, pass interference or holding penalties on third down that converted it to a first down. It didn't really show up in those 4 for 16, but. I'm with you on the front 7. I think they played well. 10 tackles for loss, 5 sacks, under 100 yards rushing. I mean, I don't know what you can ask for. I think early in the game, they were probably getting a little bit too deep, pinning their ears back a little bit and giving up some big plays there in the first few minutes, their first couple of drives, but they seem to fix that. And I mean, when I look at 10 tackles for loss and 5 sacks, I think that's big time numbers for a defense. And these are numbers that I expect for a defense. But at the same time, the DBs, they didn't stand up to the Kentucky receivers and Brock Vandergriff, I guess, like I expected that they would. So I'm right there with you. But I don't think that the DBs, I don't think that the back end played as well as maybe you're giving them credit for. I was disappointed in the DBs.
Yeah, well, one guy I want to point out in the defensive backfield that I thought had a really good game. I thought he got called for one trash pass interference call. I believe it was in the first quarter. It was early on in the game. was Jaden Kennedy. I thought he played really well. You look at his numbers; he had 7 tackles, 2 solo, a couple pass breakups. That was one of the guys they were really focusing on. The pass interference I didn't think was egregious enough to warrant a flag. It was the one that was off to the right sideline there. Like I said, I'm pretty sure it was in the first quarter. That one kept a drive alive, though, if I remember right. So that was a big one. Outside of that, I thought he played really well. Amos has been a big topic of conversation since that game ended last night. They really attacked Trey, went after him over and over and over again, but he still ended up with 4 tackles, 3 pass breakups. He made big plays, but he got also called for one of those big pass interference penalties too, if I'm not mistaken. But Kennedy, and kind of throwing you on the spot here, it's not a name that I brought up to you or anything before the show. Did you notice anything from him? Did you see him stand out on that back end of the defense?
Yeah, I mean, I thought he was the bright spot there. I
Okay.
mean, like you said, I mean, he had 7 tackles and he did have one big pass breakup
Yeah.
early in the game that I remember, and then the pass interference. But yeah, and I guess maybe I'm down on the DBs more than I should be, just because that's what really sticks out to me. Probably because the front seven, like we said, was so dominant that But
Yeah,
it felt like, on defense, that's what cost us, was the back end, and I did not expect that to be the case against Kentucky.
yeah, and what's getting lost in all this is nobody would be talking about the back end of the defense if the offense just held up to their end of the bargain here on Saturday, but they didn't.
That's the real
Go
disappointment.
out. Yeah. You go out with the scripted plays, punch it in the end zone, first drive, and then it's basically crickets the entire first half from this offense after that. We talked about them being 4 for 16 on third down. Ole Miss was only 1 for 10. Okay, 2 for 2 on fourth downs. One of those being that big play to pre-scoring there on that last drive to help set up a field goal. But
His only catch.
this only I know we're going to dive into that too, because it's really frustrating at this point, because it's been such a staple of Kiffin's offenses. You look at guys like Kenny Yeboah that had really good years for Ole Miss at that tight end position. Now we got 2 guys that I feel like can really play and can really be a difference maker in the passing game to go along with all of these other guys. But I think this is going to start up front. If you listen to my interview with Aaron Gershon earlier this week before the game from Believe in Kentucky and the Cat Paws 247 site, one thing me and him really hammered home, and I was really cautious, and it's one reason that I did not bet Ole Miss on the spread. Me and you both said, Hitch, that's way too many points against this Kentucky team, because we felt they were really, really good defensively. And Deion Walker up front in particular was a guy that raised hell all game long. Our offensive line didn't know what to do with him. He's a big body, he can plug holes, but he can rush the passer too. And he had fits inside with that Rebel offensive line. Really kept things off balance for the offense from the get-go. Basically seemed to kind of rattle Dart a little bit. I didn't feel like Dart played really well, and I honestly hadn't even gone and looked at his numbers. 18 for 27, 261, 1 touchdown, no picks, but he ended up taking 4 sacks. We weren't able to establish the run, but there were a few throws that Dart had downfield, one to Trey Harris that he underthrew, one to Juice Wells that he underthrew, and then there's one to Trey Harris again that he overthrew him after he had a step on the defender as well. Not one of Jackson's best games. Just, overall, tell me what you thought about the offense and what the biggest problem was on Saturday.
The offensive line, and I think, and I brought it up last week, last Sunday when we talked, right? Like I said that through these first 4 games, I wish that I would have seen more bullying from the offensive line. Like I wanted to see that once they got to a defensive line like Kentucky, an SEC defensive line, that I could trust that we could get a push and that we could run the ball like we wanted to. And throughout the first 4 games, we did that, but I don't think that we did it convincingly, because it felt like once we got down to where we needed 2 or 3 yards, it would be a gimmick play, a JJ McGee play, or a quarterback draw, or something like that. And so I was legitimately concerned about the offensive line going into this game. And I hate it. I'm not saying I told you so, or I'm glad I'm right, because I'm definitely not. I don't. When you look at it, 92 rushing yards. Henry Parrish Jr. and Dart each had 13 rushes each. Matt Jones with 3. I mean, 29 rushes for a team that leads the SEC in rushing every year. It just doesn't seem like the offensive line was ready for this Kentucky defensive line, and that was a concern for me coming into the game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and another concern when you look back on this game on Saturday, of course, Trey Harris had another big game.
Big one.
11 catches, 176 yards, and a touchdown. Outside of that hitch, there were 2 catches for 19 yards from all other receivers, and that came from Caden Lee. And if I remember right, the first catch from Caden Lee came on the first play of the game. I know it was the first drive. It was one of those little RPO hitches there out to the sideline. That was one of them. And outside of Caden Lee, as we said, pre-scoring had 1 catch for 42 yards, that big one to convert that 4th down. And that's it from all other wide receivers and tight ends. Juice Wells, no catches. Jordan Watkins, no catches. It was a real problem. That it's one thing we've been able to do all year long is use all of these different weapons to keep defenses off balance a little bit and spread things around, and we just weren't able to do it.
Yeah, and like you said, Dart just didn't look sharp. The overthrows and you look at his stats: 18 for 27, 261, 10 yards a pop, a touchdown, an 80 QBR. It's not bad, but if you watch that game, you look at it and you go, I don't know, the overthrows. And then there was also some bad decisions, like on that last drive, the last couple of drives, like he was making decisions. And I was like, man, I'm sitting in my living room and I can see that. Like, I don't, I don't know, just didn't feel prepared. Maybe and that's not an accusation. It just saying that's what it felt like.
And I think we need to add a little context to this. The reason that we're saying Jackson Dart didn't play very well is because of the expectations we had for him, and it's expectations he set himself through his play over these last couple of years.
What we've seen.
He's one of the best quarterbacks in the country. That's what I'm saying.
We've seen him hit those Trey Harris throws. We've seen him hit those Juice Wells throws, and yesterday, for whatever reason, it just wasn't there. They weren't there,
Yeah. I mean, there's so many years where we would have loved to have had a quarterback to go 18 for 27 for 261, 1 touchdown and no picks, and then rush for another 46, right? But this is different. This is a different team. Jackson's a different quarterback. We have high standards for him. And look, I have no doubt that he's going to figure it out. He's going to make better decisions. And whatever's going on with the under and overthrows that he's having, it kind of dates back to that Georgia Southern game where he underthrew Juice Wells, or it was either Juice Wells or Trey Harris going across the middle there at the end of the game, where if he just puts enough air under the ball, it's an easy walk-in touchdown. He underthrows him, then he comes in and underthrows a couple of big plays this game as well. I'm sure he's going to get it figured out, but the reason we're saying that he was disappointment.
Sorry, this Kentucky defense, though, I mean, is very good. I mean, coming into this game, you're looking at 27th in the country when it comes to defensive success rate, 14th when it comes to stuff, 5th when it comes to line yards, right? Top 50 in the country at points per opportunity. They like this Kentucky defense was very good coming into this game. So it's not 100% on Jackson Dart of right. No. Like, I mean, look, these DBs, all of the stuff's on timing, right? These DBs, if the receiver gets pushed off at the line, right, doesn't get off the line cleanly, that timing is messed up, and that could be the cause of the overthrow, right? It may not be on Jackson Dart at all, but it just feels like one of those times where it just I don't know that I saw him let a throw go with confidence yesterday, right? Every throw was, was just kind of whatever the word is, the opposite of confidence. And also you've got to credit Kentucky too. Not only for their defense, but I think, for the game plan that they had. Thinking back on it, I think that this is probably how this happened. And I don't know this for sure, but right, if this game plan was the game plan that Mark Stoops had against South Carolina, it didn't work. It blew up in his face. He couldn't control the clock. South Carolina just kept scoring on him. Tinkered with it a little bit, got it to Georgia. It almost worked against Georgia, right? Like controlling the clock, controlling the time possession, however they decided to do that. almost got it to work against Georgia. And then against here, right, we had some 3-and-outs. We had some penalties that extended drives. It just, everything came together with their game plan. And listen to this. Time of possession, 39 minutes and 43 seconds for Kentucky to 20 minutes. Double our time of possession. So it worked. Their game plan worked.
Yeah. And look, whenever you go on the road and beat the number 6 team in the country like Kentucky did Ole Miss, you got to have breaks go your way, right? Like we said, you had that push off on the 4th and 7 on that bomb there to set up the touchdown that put them. And hell, even on the touchdown, we force a fumble going into the end zone, and it literally pops up right into the Kentucky player's hands where he runs it in. Right?
I forgot about that.
And
I forgot.
Yeah.
How did I forget about that?
But even before that, you have the Trey Harris fumble where he catches the ball, turns up field, and the only reason that thing is a fumble is because he lands on top of the defender and nothing hits the ground, and then it comes out, right? Those are all breaks that those kind of teams have to have. Credit to them. They had a great plan. They got the breaks they needed to, and then when they got them, they took advantage of them, right? So that's kind of what happened there. And again, the game plan I thought was incredible for Kentucky. One thing that they did offensively that they had a lot of success with, you look at Vandegrift there, and he only has 3 net yards rushing. Well, that's because he was sacked 5 times. They did a really good job with mainly quarterback draws. They ran a lot of quarterback draws with him, really called soft guard to get 6, 7, 8 yards a pop, some chunk yardage to keep them ahead of the chains, to keep them on schedule. That kept that offense kind of in a little bit of a groove, even though they weren't able to capitalize on it every single time. But offensively, they had a really good game plan. They knew what they wanted to do, and Ole Miss knew what we wanted to do too. We just could not execute at the level that we're used to seeing this offense execute at. Now, with the offensive line, it is worth stating that Jaden Williams was out. He's been our best offensive lineman by far all year long. That was a big blow. Diego Pounds filled in for him. I would think that Diego played okay, but whenever you're missing your best defense or offensive lineman, and that offensive lineman is a left tackle, then that's going to be tough to overcome. Need to get Jaden back, get him back to that left tackle spot, try to shore up this offensive line. That way, we can use Diego as more of a swing guy. He can give breathers to tackles, guards. Same way with Jerquan Scott. He can do guard, center, even play tackle if you need him to. So a lot of things to work on before the Rebels hit the road to go to Columbia, South Carolina. And they've got a pretty good pass rusher over there, too, that we're going to have to deal with next Saturday, Hitch.
Yeah, they do. Before we get there, though, talking about the offense, I think we have to start asking more questions about Ulysses Bentley, right? I don't. I'm confused at this point.
And especially yesterday when Parrish got hurt, he came up limping, stayed in the game, ran it again, then he was down after that, and then you were down to Matt Jones basically. I kept saying the same thing. I was like, hey, you still got Bentley over there. Bentley's still on the sidelines, right? You can put him in. He's fresh. And at that point, we really needed a spark offensively anyway. I didn't get why you wouldn't go to him right there to just try to light a fire under him a little bit, because that's a guy that's dying to get in the game and make a difference for this team, and a guy that's done it over and over and over again. So I'm not sure what's going on there. I was really surprised, though, after Parrish went down, that we didn't see Bentley in there at least for a few plays. And again, going forward, I think you've got to get these tight ends a lot more involved than what they've been so far. Prescorn has 9 catches through 5 games right now. He's an absolute weapon there, and he's a guy that can stay on the field every single play if you need him to, because he's a really good blocking tight end on top of his pass catching abilities. And Daquan Wright is an incredible athlete at tight end as well. Really wish we would see them utilized a little bit more going forward, but they've got a lot of things to work out because, look, the season's not over, okay? As you know, we can still go 10-2, make the playoffs, all that, but this better be a wake-up call that these guys need to get it in gear, take this thing seriously, and we can't have another clunker like we just saw Saturday.
Yeah, it makes every other game uber important. Right? Like you just said, going to South Carolina next week. They've got that defensive end, Dylan Stewart, the freshman, who, but we better be ready to block him because he is killing quarterbacks. And we don't need that to happen to Jackson Dart for sure. But I mean, it's definitely, that's the message is it's definitely not the end of the world. You know, you lose a game that you fully expect to win. You know, I was probably too confident going into the game. Not that it matters, but I'm like you said at the beginning, like it did not even cross my mind that we would lose the game until he missed that field goal. The entire game, I was sitting there and I was going, we'll figure it out. Like, we'll score here. And so, that's probably a little too confident, which as Ole Miss fans, we should know, you know, we are Ole Miss, so we probably shouldn't be that way. But again, this schedule,
everything's still in front of us.
The schedule is not as bad as some of the other ones. I don't love all of the road games and where we have to go, but I think that we are better football teams than those on a neutral field, and so we have to use this game against Kentucky as a fire, you know, to light a fire, and say we have to win out. We have to beat Georgia, right? Alabama beating Georgia, like we have to beat. We don't get to play Alabama this year. We have to beat Georgia now. Like, it's not a question. Georgia comes to Ole Miss. If Georgia comes to Ole Miss and beats us in Vaught Hemingway, we're not making the playoffs. I can say that right now. So we have to beat Georgia. That should be the goal, is to win out and make a statement against Georgia.
Yeah, and I'm not sure I completely agree with that. As long as we go 10-2, you're only allowed to drop one more, though, right? And I think that one might end up being Georgia. But if it is, then you've got wins at South Carolina, at LSU, home against Oklahoma, in Florida, you know, at Arkansas. Those are all really tough games, though. The margin of error has gotten so much smaller than we expected it to be at this time of year, right? We expected to be undefeated going into Baton Rouge at the very least.
Yeah, and I just think that other teams are playing so well right now that 10-2. You know, I don't. You've got a couple of Group of 5 teams that are making a real, gonna make that decision real hard. And you know, a 2-loss SEC team with 2 losses at home, right? Against SEC teams with multiple losses. 10-2, I don't know that gets you in.
I think it will. I do.
Yeah,
I think 10-2 in this league ends up getting you in. But that's the fun thing about it. We get to play it out. Sure. And if Ole Miss does get to 10-2, then we get to see what the committee ends up doing there. Right before we started recording, we'll hit this real quick. Odds came out for the game on Saturday. Ole Miss is 10.5-point favorites in Columbia. Obviously, I'm not doing anything with that right now. See how things kind of start moving throughout the week, see what our health looks like. Need to get some guys back on that offensive line, need to get them up to speed and playing at a high level before we go over there, though. So
that's a crazy number.
Yeah, you know, it's high again.
Okay, I was gonna say I'm not insane. That's a crazy number after the games yesterday.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Yeah, it is. Gotcha. But they're supposed to get Lenore Sellers back too, so that's going to be a whole nother thing for the Rebels to have to deal with too, with Sellers back at quarterback. I assume he's going to be playing. Haven't heard anything, but I assume that's going to be the case. Before we get out of here, let's take a look, see what happened around the SEC yesterday. Obviously, not touching that Ole Miss Kentucky game again. Arkansas and Texas A&M in Arlington. Arkansas hung in there. A&M scores a touchdown there in the fourth to win 21-17. Taylor Green, 279 yards, a touchdown and a pick. Did you get to watch any of this game, Hitch?
Some of it. I was on the under on this one, actually, and it was scary there in the first quarter. They scored like 21 points in the first quarter.
21 points,
yeah, but it really settled in, and they stayed in the middle of the field the whole game, and it hit. I watched a little bit of it. It looked like Taylor Green was not dominant. That's the wrong word, but it looked like Taylor Green was the highlight of this game.
Yeah. And then in Auburn, Alabama, Oklahoma with a big fourth quarter to come back and beat Auburn 27-21. Didn't expect it, one, to be that high scoring or that close. I was surprised Auburn was able to put up that many points on them.
Yeah, it looked like Auburn was putting it together. I mean, I was
Yeah.
kind of surprised, and then fell apart like only a Hugh Freeze team could do there in those last two possessions to lose this game. That was crazy.
Yeah. Peyton Thorne actually played pretty well. 338, three
Yeah.
touchdowns, one pick. But that pick was that pick six there in the fourth quarter, right? That's a big one that you just
what
can't
a
have.
bad throw. The worst throw he could have made.
Yeah. Kind of a shocker in Austin. Mississippi State hung around for a while down there with Texas. This was a 14-6 game going into halftime. Texas pulls away a little bit there in the second half, but State, for all intents and purposes, kept it somewhat respectable based on what people thought. Only lose 35-13 there in Austin.
Yeah, and it was 7-3 with State going in. It could have been 10-7 State, and I think they ended up kicking a field goal to make it 7-6, and then Texas kind of took over from there after halftime. But it was way too close going into halftime.
Yeah. And then the game of the year in college football, if there's a better one all year long, then I can't wait for it to start. Georgia travels to Tuscaloosa, and Alabama is just doing whatever they want to in the first half against the Bulldogs, right? Build this big lead. You get into the fourth quarter, though, and Georgia comes storming back, ends up taking the lead on Alabama, and then you have that great freshman Ryan Williams from Alabama makes a hell of a catch and run, ends up with 177 yards on 6 catches and a touchdown, and then Alabama holds off a late Georgia drive. Georgia drives all the way down, has a ball in the end zone to tie it up, try to send it to overtime. And another freshman cornerback for Alabama makes a hell of a play, goes up, gets the interception there in the end zone, takes the knee and ends it. But just what an incredible game there in Tuscaloosa. Probably not the last time we see those two teams play, I wouldn't think.
Yeah, Jalen Milroe is fun to watch, my man. I loved it. I watched more of this game than I intended to. Especially the first half, and then I kind of started watching other games that had maybe some monetary interest, and I kept looking back at this one, and I thought, oh, okay, Georgia, they're in the third quarter, they scored a touchdown and got 2, and then I looked, and they were within it, and I thought, man, and before I knew it, they were winning whatever it was, 34-33, and I thought, man, I have missed the best football game ever, but flipped back over there. Alabama did come out on top, and man, they said it yesterday on game day, and that this is why I went with Alabama last night. Is that it feels like Alabama has an identity. They have Milroe. Milroe has playmakers. They play defense, and Georgia didn't have an identity. Like, he had Carson Beck, but who was Carson Beck? Who was going to help him? Who was he going to throw to? And that it really felt like that way last night. I mean, Alabama dominated the game except for a few minutes there in the fourth quarter where Georgia almost came back. But, yeah, it was a fun one.
Yeah, great game. Milroe goes for 374, 2 touchdowns and a pick, 16 carries, 117 yards, and 2 more touchdowns on the ground for Milroe. Really shoots him up those Heisman rankings, I would think. And then in the biggest screw job in the SEC last night, the refs had it out for my Jaguars. I mean, just wouldn't let them get anything going on the ground. If the refs would have stayed out of the way, South Alabama had this one going away, but instead ended up dropping a heartbreaker 42-10 in Baton Rouge.
Yeah, I think from the jump, the Jags were in trouble. I thought they would cover. I thought they would stay within the 20. But LSU decided to make a statement on this game. So, yeah, it was a tough one.
Yeah, they did. And they had a chance to cover there late. Had they're there 4th and goal from the 2-yard line, go for it, end up not getting it, ends up getting stopped at the 1. I thought he was going to get in. 3 LSU was converged on Gio Lopez scrambling there, trying to get in, stop him there right inside the 1-yard line, then get the ball back again and drive down the field, get with like inside the 20 or something like that, go for it again on 4th down, and don't get it there. So those were 2 big ones for anybody betting on the Jaguars last night. So hopefully, Major Applewhite and that crew, they send all that film off to the SEC office. That way they can file formal complaints against those officials for not letting the Jaguars do what they were going to do. I mean, it was a lot from the beginning, but the SEC just wasn't going to let that happen, I don't think.
Hell yeah.
Yeah. All right, Hitch, well, you got anything else before we get out of here, bud?
No, man. No, don't overreact. I'm not gonna say we're fine. I'm not gonna say we're okay, but I think we're fine. We're okay. Let's take care of business. We have to win all of these games anyway, right? Like you have to go and play and win the games in front of you. Win the game in front of you, right? Go to Columbia next week.
Yeah.
Take care of business, win that game, then we'll talk about the next one.
Yeah, absolutely nothing has changed from an expectation standpoint, from goals that are reachable standpoint. I didn't think we would go undefeated all year long, so I just didn't think the first loss would come this early in the season. Put it behind you. Get back in practice. Get back in the film room. Fix the things that didn't go well, and get ready for a hell of a South Carolina team that's going to be tough to beat on the road. 2:30 next Saturday, but we'll be ready for that. And after that, me and Hitch will be back with y'all again next Sunday to do a recap show of that. Just kind of a snapshot of our week ahead. Obviously, on Tuesdays, I'll have Brian Baldwin on from Miss 98 Scoreboard Show like I do every Tuesday. And then we'll do our gambling show on Wednesday. If y'all haven't been tuning into that, the show's been doing pretty good here the last few weeks, especially on the straight bets. If you just follow those 3 straight bets we've been doing, those have been going pretty well so far this year for us. So we will dive into that, see which ones we're looking at for next week's games, and then we'll put something together. Maybe I'll try to get a guest on to preview South Carolina, or maybe me and Hitch will hit record again and just do it ourselves. Who knows? We'll bring you a show like that as well. So y'all tune in next week. Be on the lookout, and I appreciate y'all tuning in again this Sunday, and we will see y'all again here soon.
Hi, Toddy.
Hi, Toddy.